At 15,300 feet, 0 point was as far as we could go. Located in the northeastern Indian state of Sikkim, 0 point is a stone's throw from the border with China. The air up there is so thin, makes your head spin. That morning, we traveled by jeep, up and up through steep valleys inhabited by Tibetan and Nepalese yak herders, across bridges strewn with prayer flags, questionable bridges, and up into the high country of the Himalaya. If your heart doesn't just sing in a landscape like this, you are an asshole. The roads up in this very rugged landscape are maintained by the Border Roads Organization, BRO. Its adorable acronym is exactly what you would think. Bro. So all throughout Sikkim, there are these signs about like, bro's got your back. This was our fourth time traveling to India, where I've spent about a year of my life. We were traveling to the northeastern state of Sikkim, sandwiched between the Chinese, Nepalese, and Bangladeshi borders. But what was most new to us wasn't this stunning, and it really is just a magnificent part of the world, but our travel companion. People think that traveling with a 4-month-old in rural India must be hard, but precisely the opposite is true. It is 100 times more fun to travel with a kid. If I had been John Bon Jovi, we wouldn't have received a fraction of the attention we got with this sweet guy. Just treated like celebrities everywhere. Probably John Bon Jovi doesn't pull a ton of weight in northeastern India, but you get the point I'm trying to make. I'd like to share a little bit of the very personal story about how I came to build a law practice that allows me to travel a couple months out of the year. In addition to being in India multiple times, we've been in China, Burma, also called Myanmar, several times to Thailand, Hawaii. This year we're heading to Bhutan, Singapore, Thailand, and Laos. And I'll share some of the tools and tactics that we use to make this a reality. I will also share 3 travel hacks that pertain to food. City miles. After law school, I started working as a ghostwriter for a LexisNexis immigration law treatise. After that, I went back to the Seattle area and started a judicial law clerkship. And in case you think I'm like Mr. Fancy Pants, like this was a very humble clerkship in a local trial court. My wife and I kind of started the traditional trudge towards professional life. So we did what we kind of thought you did and bought a house in the good part of town up the street from Pat Pallas, the past bar president. And we started renovating, because your kitchen isn't ever good enough. So we started with this nuclear disaster zone of a kitchen, and over the course of a year, made it into this. So we were building. And at the same time, I was trying to launch my own solo law practice. At the same time that at home, I am the demo guy, the plumber, the carpenter. At the law practice, I'm the manager, the marketing guy, sales, I'm C-suite, and you have to also practice law. Anybody who's been in solo practice knows what I'm talking about. Every hour of every day was spent building stuff at the house projects, or putting out fires at the firm. Well, it leaves no time for this. This is the Coleman-Deming route on Mount Baker in the North Cascades. It's just a beautiful part of the country. And before I had a house that consumed all of my time, I get to do this on the weekends. But now I'm spending all of my time building the house and working on just endless stuff at the firm. And I started to feel that I wasn't in control of my own time, and I wasn't in control of my own life. As I was making this transition to professional life, I had a very sad and transformative life event. My father was truly one of the great software engineers of his generation. He worked on the first Microsoft Windows. When he left Microsoft, he built his own program that allowed you to play music on a keyboard and transcribe musical notation. He was a brilliant and infinitely kind man. And in February 2011, he took his own life. We get so caught up in the day-to-day. We get a job, we start a law practice, and it's so easy to forget that what we're doing is choosing how we're going to spend our lives. What are the beautiful moments in your life? What are the beautiful moments? For me, they tend to look like this. Skimming through the landscape of some far-off place, sitting in a dirty rail compartment on a hard bench with my son by my side and my wife, maybe sipping a cup of chai out of a clay cup, not really knowing where we're going, not caring, with smells of spice and open fires and wet rice paddies coming in the window. These are some of the moments I live for. So my wife and I sat down and we said, what do we want? One of the things we want is to travel 2 months out of the year to places like this. So we sold our house. We sold or gave away most of our possessions, and we moved in with my mother. It was, we agree, absolutely the single best decision we ever made in our lives. Well, I also needed to have a business that would allow me to work seamlessly from any place in the world with an internet connection. By the way, the internet in Sikkim is not bad for Lower Himalaya. So what grew out of this is what became Sound Immigration. We are America's web-based immigration law firm, and our job is to unite families and help them create new lives in the United States. I'll talk some more later about some of the specific tools we use, but just to give you a flavor of the firm, we are a purely paperless, cloud-based practice. We're a decentralized. Our attorneys work out of 5 independent offices in Washington State. One thing we do that's a little different is we got legal process outsourcing right. Our production work, standard preparation of immigration packets, is done by a large legal team in Bangalore, India. And this allows us to deliver work product literally overnight to our clients. And we don't have to stay up all night. I mentioned my love for travel, but don't get me wrong, like all the other attorneys in this room, my main passion is to be of service to others. Any of us who are practicing law could make our lives one hell of a lot easier by getting out of this crazy law practice business, right? There are a lot easier ways to make a buck. There are certainly easier ways to travel around the world than running a law firm. But we do this because we care about the work we do for clients. We unite families and help them build completely new lives in the United States. We are their compasses during one of the most transformative moments of their life. I love what we do. I just want to do it from India. Well, let's hop back on the road and talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of law practice from India. This is the New Delhi train station. It is the worst of three rail stations in India, in Delhi. But first, the travel hack. Do people watch Anthony Bourdain? Okay. So you all know that some of the finest meals in the world are served by old grannies on sidewalks. For example, in Hanoi, in Vietnam, did you know that there's a thing called barbecue soup? Check it out, it's awesome. What people don't always know, though, is that the street food is not only delicious, but it's often safer than restaurants. Because, take India for example, with a street vendor, you can see kind of how fast the food is turning over, get a rough sense of the cleanliness of the place. With a restaurant, it is a real roulette spin, because you don't really know what's going on back there. Even at some of the fancier restaurants, you're really better off eating on the streets. This is called a puri. It's like a little fried piece of dough with like some really simple potato curry in it, served in a leaf. This is awesome stuff. This is in West Bengal. Collaboration. So we have a 5-attorney team. At the time that I was doing my first trips, like to Burma, it was just me and one other associate. And we got to have collaboration and team and communication within the team. What we use as the hub for all of our communication within the firm is Slack. Who here has used Slack? Okay, that's good representation for lawyers. These are cutting-edge lawyers here. So Slack basically gives you any number of channels to have something that's roughly like an old-school web forum. So one of the missions in my professional life is to kill email. I loathe email with just a passion. It's my only hatred in life. The stats are that we spend as attorneys, as knowledge workers, 40% of our professional lives digging ourselves out of the hell of our inboxes. So at our law firm, we do not use email communication. I do not accept it from team members, and I don't respond to it from clients. So Slack, it gives us basically a communication hub. So even though we're operating across different time zones, it's like the main place that we can come back to and talk as a team. It's a nice way to preserve archival conversation. So if somebody wants to ask, oh God, what did Greg say about the questions we ask at consults for N400 cases, they can just go in and search and it's all there in one place. One of the most important decisions we made as a firm, and I owe this completely to John Grant out of Portland, Oregon, I don't know why he's not here at the conference, was switching over our case management system to Trello, and specifically to approaching cases through the lens of agile project management. We can't go into the details of agile, but there's a very detailed blog post here on our website. One of the critical things about agile is you create a visualization of all of your work in production. So instead of thinking about cases in task-wise manner, you ask, who is the person who has the next touch point on this case that is preventing it from being closed out? Is it that we're waiting on the client? Are we waiting on a third party? Are we waiting on Greg? Are we waiting on an associate? We switched over to this because I had the sense that I didn't think cases were getting done fast enough and I didn't know who to yell at. And when we did this, and we've literally put it up on a wall at the firm, we found that by far what was keeping cases from going to conclusion was our clients, and that their failure to respond to our questions, I mean, it's not a culpable thing, it's their case, but that was what was slowing us down. So like, we weren't the problem, it was the clients. And it's not necessarily a problem to find where in the system the bottleneck is, but it lets you know where everything is at any given time. Trello is not a full law practice management system. There's a concurrent session on this exact topic going on right now. I hope it's being recorded because I want to watch it. It is. Awesome. Zapier allows you to basically duct tape together different apps. So we love Trello for visualizing case production, but it doesn't do everything else that Clio does, which is at the heart of our law practice. And at the risk of pandering, I mean, if there's any one tool or piece of software that allows me to hang out in India and run a law firm, it is by far Clio. So I really owe this lifestyle in large measure to Clio. Clio plays very nicely, as you heard from Jack. It's going to play even nicer with other apps through what's called an open API. So basically, you don't have to live in the Trello user environment from a case management system. If you want to use Trello, you can duct tape them together using Zapier. Travel hack number 2, don't wait for an invitation. My video here spaced out. I love learning how to cook in new parts of the country, of the world where we travel to, and it had just never occurred to me, maybe for obvious reasons, having to do with social norms, that you can just walk into a kitchen in a restaurant and hang out. In India, New Delhi, the capital, all of the states, every state in the federation has basically a cafeteria. They have a state house and a cafeteria. So if you want to know what authentic Assamese food tastes like or what they have for lunch in Andhra Pradesh, you can go there and eat it with like the people from that state. So we were having a great meal, a Gujarati Bhavan there. And I was curious, like, how do they make these chapatis? They were a special type of chapati. So I just walked back into the restaurant, and they're happy to just show you around. It had never occurred to me to do that. And so now when I travel, I almost always just go in and hang out in the restaurant kitchen. And like, nobody has ever done that before, so it's like traveling with a kid. It's like this big novel thing, and you're a celebrity, and you're welcomed in. So if you like to cook, go check out how the pros do it. And it's free. I mean, you don't get charged for that. Communication. So none of this is potentially groundbreaking for people in this room, but just to show you what's under the hood of the firm. All of our phones are answered by a Ruby receptionist. One of the things that's been very helpful to us is that we also adopted Lexicata for our client intake system and sales platform, and it integrates with Ruby. So when a caller contacts the firm and I can't take the call because I'm on a train in India, Ruby takes a note and it goes automatically into our sales platform so that they'll start to receive automated follow-up emails from us and get the touch points that are required to make them feel like they're not just being ignored. Ruby's just been a phenomenal business partner to have. A really, really helpful thing that we also adopted, and this is something that I don't think a ton of law firms do, is we outsourced our mailroom. Because our support staff is on the other side of the planet, we were ending up in the situation, where I was scanning mail or my associate was scanning mail, and it was like, this is crazy. We can't be spending our lawyer time processing mail. So these guys give you an address. They've got locations all across the United States, and they will scan your email, with text recognized PDF. And then what we do is mail comes in, and then our team in Bangalore logs in to the web portal with Earth-class mail and follows a filing protocol. So if it's a notice from the immigration service that says, hey, your case got approved, then our staff from Bangalore comes in and sends the client a follow-up message in Clio, we don't use email, saying, dear client, here's your notice, congratulations, here are the 3 steps that are gonna happen now. So it totally takes attorneys out of the initial loop of having anything to do with mail processing, and this is the critical part, we don't need actual boots on the ground in terms of employees to manage the mail. The whole thing is done out of house. Third travel hack, DIY restaurant menus. Obviously, I love Indian food. That's one of the main reasons to go to India. But a lot of, especially the smaller towns, have really pretty greasy kind of diner food. It's like a Chicago greasy spoon, but it's India. So it's like a super oily curry. And after a couple of weeks of that, you're not doing too well. At the same time, we were passing all of these beautiful vegetables in the marketplace. So what we figured out that you can do is you just go buy whatever you want. So we got a bunch of, eggplant and okra, and we just took it to one of these small, very informal restaurants and said, hey, could you cook it for us? And by the way, don't throw all that ghee and butter and oil in there, just very simply. They charge you 50 cents or a dollar, and then you got a nice vegetable dinner. I traveled for over a year in Asia, and I never thought of doing this. So you just create whatever you want, and you pay, a little bit to the restaurant to cook it, and you get a customized dinner. This was transcendental to discover that. So the last piece that I'll touch on is outsourcing. As I mentioned, all of our production work, all of the standard putting together of immigration packets, drafting, is done by our team in Bangalore. Now, people always associate outsourcing to India with low cost. It is true that you can achieve some cost efficiencies with outsourcing, but I want to encourage you to not think of that as the primary purpose of outsourcing. For me, the number one reason to use it is speed. As I mentioned, we can literally draft a packet overnight without a touch point from our US-based attorneys. We get our questionnaires back from the client, go straight over to our team in Bangalore, and then when our attorney comes in the next day, there's a draft packet ready for his or her quality assurance review. So that's magic. It's magic for us because all of that time crunch and stress is just gone from our attorney's work experience. And it's great for our clients. Clients, are always complaining about not getting their calls returned and feeling like the firms aren't moving forward fast enough with their work product. This lets us be like crazy fast getting their drafts done. Another thing is the quality. The jobs in legal process outsourcing in India are good jobs. The education system in India is good. So these are like top-notch, very savvy professionals that are doing your work. This is not low-grade stuff. So once we kind of worked out the kinks with this process, it's been very, very consistent, certainly better than my dear and past most recent legal assistant ever produced. So I want to end on a note that I hit earlier, which is an invitation. ClioCon is really an invitation to us to think about what sort of professional lives and just lives writ large we want to build for ourselves. My wife and I were staying with our son Kai in Darjeeling, India, the famous tea estate. It was basically boring. So we jumped in a Jeep and drove over to the Nepalese border and took this great hike in the national park there. We started the day in the back room of this super smoky chai stall with a wood fire, eating Tibetan momos with these like herder guys in furs and drinking chai, 3 chais, having a great time. Took this stunning hike up this ridge in the national park with valleys just cutting down below to rivers. The turnaround point for this hike, we could see up the Karakoram Valley in Nepal to the great peaks of the Karakoram. Right in the very distance, you could see Everest poking out. On our way back, we stopped in this hut to have chang, which is basically like unfiltered beer. They take millet and throw it into a plastic tub and let it ferment, and then you get it like a tankard of it, and they pour hot water over it. And it's just a little bit alcoholic, and you drink it through a filtering straw. It's really fun stuff. So we're sitting there in this chang stall with my son on my lap at the end of our hike, and this old man walks in. And he looks at my son and immediately recognizes him. He comes over to my son and bows. And he's seeing that my son is a reincarnated Tibetan Buddhist Lama. And my son reaches out with the traditional blessing of a llama and touches this guy on the head. The guy brings out some Buddhist artifacts, and my son picks them out. When they search for the Dalai Lama, this is the Dalai Lama finds the mandala. So my son picks out the right object. This guy gives him a prayer shawl. Meanwhile, the whole village has shown up at this Chong stall. So we go out for a group photo with the old man and some of his family. That's my son with the Tibetan prayer shawl and stuffed tiger. Tiger is a symbol in Tibetan Buddhism. A moment like this, you just can't measure the richness this brings to your life. So I'm very thankful that I've been able to work towards a life that makes more of these moments possible. And maybe hanging out in smoky Nepali tea stalls isn't your thing, but I hope you'll have some time here at the conference to think about, what are the moments in your life that make it rich, and let's work backwards and build a law practice or not a law practice that makes it more likely than not that we'll have more of those moments in our life. So thanks a lot. I will circulate later an infographic that basically shows the various pieces of the firm and how we make it work. Maybe it's not right for everybody, but there might be something there that you guys can use. Thanks a lot.